Welcome to the Hashimoto's Doctor Podcast. You're now part of a growing community of people determined to take their health back through education and self-empowerment. But because of the healthcare system today, we don't have access to the types of healthcare that we want. So we have to do things differently. We've got to do things smarter, and we do that by becoming our own advocates. This podcast will give you the perspective and thoughts of one of the world's leading Hashimoto's doctors. So let's get started. Hi everyone, Dr. Shook here. I hope you're doing well today. In today's podcast, what I want to do is continue our discussion of nutritional deficiencies. And today I'd like to start by just discussing, why are we seeing so many more deficiencies in people today? And, why is this such an issue now? Has it always been an issue? What's really changed? And there are two major components. Number one, it's the farming practices. It's the soil that the plants are grown in have a lower concentration of a lot of these minerals, and therefore we're getting less in our food. And then secondly, there's the issue of the standard diet today being just higher in processed foods and not having the concentration of minerals, just because of the dietary choices that people are making that are really significantly contributing to a lot of these problems that we're seeing. Now, there could also be, an argument made that our bodies have a greater demand for these vitamins and minerals due to our burden, the burden placed upon our bodies to detoxify, to the stressors that we're placed under, and how that changes our physiology and places higher demand on the need for vitamins and minerals. So there are several things that are contributing to this environment where nutritional deficiencies are becoming much more common and are having a significant impact on inflammatory conditions and seem to have an association with poorer health. So those are some of the key takeaways. Now, in our past few podcasts, we've talked about iron deficiency. We talked about iron quite a bit. We talked about iodine very extensively, and I actually covered iodine in 2 podcasts, so you can go back and listen to that. That's definitely an important, very important podcast for you to listen to, because there's a lot of controversy surrounding iodine. I'm not anti-iodine. I'm not pro high dose iodine. Iodine's essential. You need it, but you have to have it at the right quantities, and I think you have to have it with the right complementary minerals. So those are some of the biggest issues. Now let's talk about a little bit more about I'd like to talk about a study where they looked at the general population, and this was actually through USDA. This was done in 2009, and basically they looked at a group of people in the U.S. population, and they evaluated the percentage of people that had deficiencies in several vitamins and minerals. And this was very interesting. The most commonly found deficiency, now unfortunately, at least in the table that I have, vitamin D was not evaluated, and iodine was not evaluated, but there are several other vitamins and minerals in here that are very, very important and vital, and something that we need to discuss. So the most significant, most common deficiency was vitamin E. Over 85.9% of the population surveyed was deficient in vitamin E. That is just mind-blowing. Now, vitamin E, when you start talking about vitamin E, you've got to realize that vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin. So what that means is that for your body to absorb vitamin E, it has to be done so with fat. It's one of the fat-soluble vitamins. There's vitamins A, D, E, and K. So that's A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble. So when you're looking at vitamin E and you see that there's that more people are deficient, you can say, well, okay, what's vitamin E found in? What types of foods? How do we get it? But then you've also got to realize that people that have difficulties with the absorption of fat, they're going to have a more difficult time getting these fat-soluble vitamins into their body. And what I've seen clinically is that people that have gallbladder issues, people that are on very low-fat diets, people that have inflammatory bowel issues or have very poor digestion, they have difficulty absorbing fat. So one of the, I think, the most important things for us to realize is that the vitamins themselves are deficient, but then, or I would say in more of a scarce supply, just due to our, the factors I discussed earlier. But then also there are physiological reasons that you may not be getting these things into your diet. And a very, very common one that I find is poor digestion. But when you're talking about the fat-soluble vitamins, you've got to realize that they're absorbed with fat. If you don't have a gallbladder, then you're going to have a decreased amount of bile salts to help with the absorption or emulsification and breakdown of fats, so that you can absorb the fat and therefore the fat-soluble vitamins, and that can create issues as well. So there are a lot of different things here, but vitamin E was one that was significantly found to be low in a significant number of people. Folate was found to be deficient in 75% of people. Let's see, iron was at 34%, magnesium at 68%. Magnesium is another one that's a very significant, I think that there is deficient in a lot of people. Let's see, what else? A few others that are notable. There's vitamin A, which is, again, it's one of the fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin A was deficient in 54% of people. So there were lots of deficiencies. Now, when we talk about vitamin A, for example, right, 54% of people having a deficiency of vitamin A. Did you know that vitamin A plays a very crucial role in thyroid hormone physiology? Vitamin A, vitamin A is really interesting because it is responsible for thyroid nuclear signaling. Okay, thyroid nuclear signaling. So the process of stimulating the cells of your body. So your thyroid hormone stimulates the cells of your body. Okay, it drives what we call a proteomic response. Just a cellular response is all you really need to know. Thyroid hormone stimulates a cellular response, changes the metabolism of the cell, which allows it to carry out its normal physiological processes. The function of each cell, it helps that cell carry out those physiological responsibilities. So when you stimulate the cell, there is a process that occurs inside of the cell where the nucleus in the center of the cell is signaled. It is stimulated, and that signal is vitamin A, or I should say that nuclear signaling is vitamin A dependent. So if you're deficient in vitamin A, there may be an issue with the signaling of the nucleus of the cell. So can you see why vitamin A would be an important thing to consider? A lot of people, we don't take these things into consideration enough, and it's okay. I mean, these are things that I've been exposed to over years and years of trial and error and study and formal training and then clinical practice. But so this was, I think that's a very important point when you realize that this study done by the USDA in 2009 showed that 54.7% of people were deficient in vitamin A, and vitamin A nuclear signaling of the cells of your body is vitamin A dependent. I think it's a big issue. Now, there's vitamin D is a huge issue as well, and we know that there are numerous studies, and there are other studies out there. This particular USDA study did not have information on vitamin D levels, but we know that vitamin D levels are commonly, when they're low, we commonly say, or I should restate that, we commonly see people with autoimmune thyroid disease, like Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, that they have very low vitamin D levels. I mean, it's not common for me to see vitamin D levels in the, below 10. More commonly, I probably see it somewhere between 10 to 20 in people that have autoimmune thyroid conditions. More and more people are taking vitamin D as a supplement, though. So, I would say a few years ago, I would see that a lot more commonly. It's becoming, more common knowledge that vitamin D, if you do any type of research, that vitamin D is is significant in and plays a significant role in these autoimmune thyroid diseases. So we have to supplement with it to some degree because of such the rampancy of deficiency. So anyway, a lot of people are taking it now. So I've seen numbers that are a little bit higher, but they're still not in the ideal ranges. Typically, I like to see vitamin D in the top 3/4 of the laboratory reference range, and that's, a lot of people, if it's in the very, very bottom, but just barely over the bottom of the lab range, then most doctors are fine with that. I'm not okay with that. I don't think that that's sufficient. I think that that's still an issue, especially when we're dealing with someone that has an autoimmune process that we're trying to improve. So those are some of the major ones that I wanted to cover today. Let's see what else. There's some other things here. What else could we? Okay, let's just touch on the last thing that I want to share with you guys are key nutrients, right? So key nutrients, we're talking about vitamin and mineral deficiencies. So what are the key nutrients that we want to consider for optimal thyroid hormone physiology that we don't want to be deficient? Okay, so number one, I would say that selenium is important. It's important because it helps to the body to produce those selenoproteins I talk about in a previous podcast, like glutathione peroxidase, and also helps to decrease inflammatory reactivity. It's one of those things that we see can be very, very beneficial. So selenium, zinc is important, iron is very important, iodine at adequate levels, but always with adequate micronutrients is important. Vitamin A is very important, as we just discussed, and then vitamin D is very important. Vitamin D is very important because it helps with immune system regulatory function. Okay, so very important to understand that. So those are the primary vitamins and minerals that I think are critical for thyroid hormone physiological normal thyroid hormone physiology. I think it's very important to understand that more is not better. Just because you can take a vitamin does not mean that that more is better. So it's not necessarily. It's just like iodine. I think there's a fine line, and that with some susceptible individuals, when you cross a certain threshold of iodine, you're going to predispose them to a greater likelihood of an inflammatory process, especially against the thyroid, and that's going to set them up for some potential issues. So there are a lot of things to keep in mind here. It's just always everything in balance, and these, just know that these micronutrients, these vitamins, these minerals are critical for normal physiological function. So if you have any questions or you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to my team, or I will do everything that we can do to help you out. Remember that, it's my mission to help you improve your quality of life. If I can help you improve your quality of life, that will improve your family, your family's life, that will improve your community, and ultimately we can change the world one person at a time. But I appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Hope you have a wonderful day. Talk to you again soon. Thanks. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out behind the scenes with Dr. Shook. You can also talk with and learn from Dr. Shook through Facebook Live on our Facebook page at the Office of Dr. Brad Shook. Don't forget, you can also get access to our videos, guidebooks, and thyroid programs at www.drbradshook.com. Oh yeah, and don't forget one more thing. We can change the world one person, one family, and one community at a time. Until next time, remember, today is your day, and no one will tell you who you are and what you can be.